I married a man I did not love to save the people I did. That is the truth I carry with me as the carriage wheels clatter over wet cobblestones, taking me away from everything I have ever known toward a house I have seen only in paintings, and a husband whose face I studied for mere minutes before signing my name beside his in the parish registry. The rain is relentless tonight, drumming against the carriage roof like impatient fingers. I press my gloved hand to the cold window and watch the countryside blur into darkness, the last lights of London fading behind us like dying embers. My wedding dress, still damp at the hem from hurrying through the church courtyard, clings to my legs. The white silk that should have been my pride feels instead like a shroud. Across from me, the Duke of Ashford sits in perfect stillness, his face half-shadowed, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond the rain-streaked glass. We have not spoken since leaving the church. I do not know if he expects me to break the silence, or if he prefers it this way. 3 months ago, my father came to me in the drawing room of our crumbling townhouse and told me that we had nothing left. The investments had failed, the creditors were circling, and my younger sisters would be turned out into the street if we could not pay what we owed. I remember the way his hands shook as he held the letter, the way my mother wept quietly in the corner, her face turned toward the window as if she could not bear to look at me. They did not ask me directly. They did not have to. I was 23, unmarried, considered pleasant enough in appearance, but without the beauty or fortune that might have secured a match before now. And then the Duke's solicitor arrived with a proposal that felt less like a rescue and more like a reckoning. The Duke of Ashford, a man of considerable wealth and even greater mystery, was seeking a wife. He was a widower, they said, reclusive and seldom seen in society since the death of his first wife 7 years prior. He required a lady of respectable birth to manage his household and represent his name at the few social engagements he could not avoid. There was no mention of affection, no expectation of companionship beyond what was necessary for appearance. In exchange, my family's debts would be cleared, my sisters provided with dowries, and my parents given a modest income to live out their years in dignity. It was a transaction, plain and spoken. I said yes before they could finish explaining the terms. The Duke's voice breaks through my thoughts, low and careful, like a man testing the strength of ice before stepping onto it. "May I offer you a blanket, Your Grace? It is cold, Your Grace." The title sounds strange directed at me, as if he is speaking to someone else, someone older and more certain. I shake my head, not trusting my voice, and he nods once before returning his gaze to the window. I study him in the dim light of the carriage lamp. He is older than I expected, perhaps in his middle 30s, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples, and a face that might be handsome if it were not so rigidly controlled. His eyes are gray, the color of winter skies, and they carry a weight I cannot name. He wears mourning well, I think, even though it has been years since he lost his first wife. There is something in his bearing that suggests he has never truly stopped grieving. I wonder what she was like, the woman who came before me, the woman whose portrait, I have been told, still hangs in the main hall of Ashford Manor. I wonder if he loved her, if he thinks of her when he looks at me, if every word he speaks to me is measured against the memory of the words he once spoke to her. The solicitor mentioned her death only briefly, calling it a tragedy, an accident, something not to be dwelt upon. But I have heard whispers. In the weeks before the wedding, I caught fragments of gossip at the dressmaker's shop, at the market, in the nervous glances of our housekeeper when I asked about the Duke's reputation. They say she fell, some claimed. They say she was ill, others murmured. And then, in a voice so low I almost missed it, one old woman said, "They say she never left." I dismissed it as the foolishness of superstition, the kind of dark stories people tell about old houses and grieving men. But now, as the carriage turns off the main road and onto a narrow lane bordered by ancient trees, I feel a chill that has nothing to do with the weather. The rain has softened to a drizzle, and through the mist I see the outline of Ashford Manor rising against the night sky. It is larger than I imagined, a great stone edifice with towers and gables that seem to lean inward, as if the house itself is folding around some secret at its core. Lights flicker in a few windows, pale and uncertain, like candles struggling against a draft. The rest of the house is dark. "We are here," the Duke says, and I hear something in his voice that I cannot quite identify. Relief, perhaps, or resignation. The carriage lurches to a stop, and a footman appears to open the door. The Duke descends first, then turns to offer me his hand. His grip is firm, impersonal, the touch of a man fulfilling an obligation. I step down onto the gravel drive, my shoes sinking slightly into the wet stones, and look up at the house that is now my home. It is more forbidding up close. The windows are tall and narrow, like eyes watching, and the front entrance is framed by columns that seem too heavy, too somber for a place meant to shelter life. Ivy clings to the walls in thick tangles, and I can hear the wind moving through it, a whispering sound that raises the hairs on the back of my neck. The Duke gestures toward the door, and I follow him up the stone steps, acutely aware of the silence that surrounds us. No one has come out to greet us. No housekeeper waits at the threshold. No servants gather to welcome their new mistress. The house feels empty, or perhaps it feels full of things I cannot yet see. Inside, the entrance hall is vast and cold. A grand staircase curves upward into shadow, and the floors are dark wood, polished to a dull shine that reflects nothing. The walls are lined with portraits, generations of Ashfords staring down with expressions ranging from stern to sorrowful. I look for her, the first Duchess, but I do not see her among these faces. Perhaps her portrait is elsewhere. Perhaps she is everywhere. The Duke removes his coat and hands it to a silent footman who has appeared from somewhere in the depths of the house. "Mrs. Calloway will show you to your rooms," he says, not looking at me. "You must be tired. We will speak in the morning." Before I can respond, an older woman emerges from a side corridor, her gray dress as severe as her expression. She curtsies briefly, her eyes flicking over me with an assessment that feels both thorough and dismissive. "Your Grace," she says, her voice flat, "if you will follow me." I glance back at the Duke, but he has already turned away, walking toward a door at the far end of the hall. He does not say goodnight. He does not look back. I am left standing in the cold grandeur of his house, a stranger in a place that does not want me, and I think of my mother's face as I left, the way she whispered, "Be brave," as if she knew what I was walking into. Mrs. Calloway leads me up the staircase, her shoes making soft, deliberate sounds on the stone steps. The air grows colder as we climb, and I pull my shawl tighter around my shoulders. We pass more portraits, more closed doors, and I try to memorize the layout. But the corridors seem to twist and turn in ways that defy logic. The house is a labyrinth, I think, and I am already lost. At last, we stop before a heavy wooden door. Mrs. Calloway opens it and steps aside, waiting for me to enter. "These are your chambers, Your Grace," she says. "The Duke's rooms are in the east wing. You will not be disturbed." I step inside, and she closes the door behind me without another word. I hear her footsteps recede down the corridor, and then there is only silence. The room is large and well-appointed, with a 4-poster bed draped in heavy curtains, a fireplace where a small fire burns, and a dressing table positioned near the window. The walls are papered in a faded floral pattern, and the air smells faintly of lavender, and something else, something older and less pleasant, like damp and thyme. I set my small traveling case on the bed and walk to the window, pulling back the curtain to look out over the grounds. The gardens stretch out below, dark and formless in the rain. I can just make out the shape of a hedge maze, a stone fountain, and beyond that, the black line of woods. It is a lonely view, beautiful in a melancholy way, and I stand there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the day settle over me like a heavy cloak. I am a duchess now, I remind myself. This is my home. I must make the best of it. I turn back to the room, intending to undress and retire, but as I do, something catches my eye. On the far wall, opposite the bed, hangs a tall mirror in an ornate gilt frame. It is the kind of mirror one might find in a grand house, the kind meant to reflect beauty and elegance, but as I look at it now, I feel a strange unease. The glass is old, slightly tarnished at the edges, and in the dim firelight, it seems almost liquid, as if the surface is not quite solid. I step closer, drawn by a curiosity I do not fully understand, and look at my reflection. I see myself as I am, pale and tired, my dark hair coming loose from its pins, my wedding dress wrinkled and damp. I look like a woman who has made a terrible mistake, and perhaps I have. I reach up to touch my face, to smooth back a strand of hair. And as I do, I see something that makes my breath catch. For just a moment, just the barest flicker of time, there is another face in the mirror beside mine. A woman, young and beautiful, with fair hair and eyes that burn with an intensity that sends a jolt of fear through me. She's wearing a wedding dress, white and pristine, and she is staring at me with a look of such fury, such possessive rage, that I step back instinctively, my heart pounding. I blink, and she is gone. The mirror shows only my own reflection, wide-eyed and trembling. I tell myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the fire, my own exhaustion playing games with my mind. But even as I think it, I know it is not true. I saw her. I felt her gaze like a physical thing, cold and accusing. I back away from the mirror, my hands shaking, and sit down heavily on the edge of the bed. The fire crackles in the hearth, the only sound in the oppressive silence of the room. I want to leave, to run back down those twisting corridors and out into the rain, to find the Duke and demand an explanation. But I cannot move. I am frozen by fear and disbelief and the terrible certainty that I am not alone in this room, that I have never been alone since I stepped through the door of Ashford Manor. I force myself to breathe, to think rationally. I am tired, overwrought, my nerves frayed by the events of the day. Tomorrow, in the daylight, this will all seem absurd. I will laugh at my own foolishness, at the way I let an old mirror and a dark house unsettle me. I will speak to the Duke, learn the truth of this place, and find my footing in this new life. I will be strong, as my mother asked. But as I lie down in the unfamiliar bed, pulling the heavy blankets up to my chin, I cannot bring myself to look at the mirror again. I close my eyes and try to sleep, but every time I begin to drift, I feel it, the sensation of being watched, the weight of a gaze that is not my own. And in the darkness behind my eyelids, I hear it, soft as a breath, soft as silk, a woman's voice, low and venomous, speaking words that I cannot quite make out, but that fill me with a dread so profound I can hardly breathe. When I finally fall asleep, I dream of a woman in white standing at the foot of my bed, her face beautiful and terrible, her hands reaching out toward me. And in the dream, she speaks clearly at last, her voice a whisper that echoes through the cold corridors of Ashford Manor and into the deepest chambers of my heart. "He belongs to me," she says. "He will always belong to me." I wake to gray morning light filtering through heavy curtains and the immediate crushing memory of where I am. For a moment I lie still, afraid to open my eyes fully, afraid to look at the mirror across the room. But when I finally summon the courage to turn my head, I see only my own pale reflection in the tarnished glass. Nothing more. The terror of last night feels distant now, unreal, like something I read in a novel rather than lived through. Perhaps it was only a dream after all. I rise and dress myself, my hands clumsy with the buttons and laces I once had a maid to help with. That life is gone now. I am a duchess, but I am also alone in ways I never imagined. When I finally make my way downstairs, following the maze of corridors as best I remember, I find the house silent and still. Dust motes float in the thin sunlight that manages to penetrate the tall windows, and my footsteps echo on the marble floors. I pass the portraits I noticed last night, and in the daylight I can see them more clearly. Generations of Ashfords, stern and watchful, but still no portrait of the first Duchess. I find the Duke in what appears to be a study, standing before a window that overlooks the gardens. He is dressed simply in dark trousers and a white shirt, his jacket discarded over the back of a chair. He looks as though he has not slept, and when he turns at the sound of my entrance, I see shadows beneath his eyes that mirror my own. "Good morning," he says quietly, and there is a formality in his tone that makes me feel like an intruder in what should now be my own home. "I trust you rested well." I consider lying, maintaining the polite fiction, but something in his expression stops me. He looks like a man expecting bad news, bracing himself for it. "As well as could be expected," I say instead. "The room is quite comfortable." He nods, as if this answer satisfies him, though I see his jaw tighten slightly. I have asked Mrs. Calloway to give you a tour of the house this morning. You should know your way around. There are rooms that are kept locked, rooms that are no longer in use, she will explain. Locked rooms. The phrase sends a chill through me, but I keep my voice steady. And will you be here, Your Grace? Should I need anything? He hesitates, and for a moment something flickers in his gray eyes, something that might be regret or longing or simply weariness. I have business in the village, he says. I will return this evening. We will dine together, and we can discuss the household arrangements properly then. He moves to leave, and I know I should let him go, should not press, but the memory of that face in the mirror, the voice in my dream, compels me to speak. Your Grace, I begin, and he stops, his back to me. I was wondering about your first wife, her portrait. I have not seen it in the hall with the others. The silence that follows is so profound, I can hear the ticking of a clock somewhere in the depths of the house. When he finally turns to face me, his expression is carefully blank, but I see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands curl into fists at his sides. Her portrait is in the gallery, he says, his voice low and tight. On the second floor, East Wing. You are welcome to see it if you wish, though I would ask that you not linger there. That part of the house is not used. Why not? The question escapes before I can stop it, and I see his expression harden. Because I do not wish it, he says, and there is a finality in those words that tells me I have crossed a boundary I did not know existed. Then, more gently, as if aware of his own harshness, he adds, My first marriage ended in tragedy. I do not care to be reminded of it more than necessary. I hope you can understand. I nod, chastened, and he leaves without another word. I stand alone in the study, my heart beating fast, and I know with absolute certainty that he is lying, or at least not telling me the whole truth. A man who does not wish to be reminded of his dead wife, does not keep her portrait hanging, does not maintain locked rooms, does not carry grief like a second skin 7 years after her death. Whatever happened to the first Duchess of Ashford, it is not finished. It is still happening. Here, in this house, and I am now part of it. Mrs. Calloway finds me an hour later and leads me through the house with brisk efficiency, pointing out the drawing room, the dining room, the morning room, the library. She shows me the kitchens, where a handful of servants work in silence, their eyes sliding away from mine when I try to greet them. She shows me the gardens through tall windows, the hedge maze, the old chapel that has not been used in decades. And always, she steers me away from certain corridors, certain staircases, with a firmness that feels like warning. When we reach the second floor, I pause at a branching hallway that leads east. The gallery, I say, more statement than question. May I see it? Mrs. Calloway's expression tightens. His Grace prefers that wing to remain undisturbed, she says. I am the Duchess now, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Surely I have the right to see my own home. For a long moment, she simply stares at me, weighing something in her mind. Then she nods, curtly. As you wish, Your Grace, but do not say I did not warn you. She leads me down the east corridor, and with each step, the air seems to grow colder, heavier. The walls here are darker, the portraits fewer, and the windows shuttered so that only thin lines of light penetrate the gloom. At the end of the hall is a set of double doors, ornately carved but dusty, as if no one has opened them in years. Mrs. Calloway produces a key from the ring at her waist and unlocks the doors, pushing them open with a creak that echoes down the empty corridor. Inside is a long gallery, the kind meant for entertaining, for dancing, for displaying a family's pride. But now it is a tomb. Dust covers everything, thick and undisturbed. Furniture sits shrouded beneath white cloths, and the chandelier overhead is dark and cobwebbed. And on the far wall, illuminated by a single shaft of pale light from a gap in the shutters, hangs a portrait. I walk toward it slowly, my footsteps muffled by the dust, and as I draw closer, I feel my breath catch. She is beautiful, heartbreakingly so, with fair hair that falls in soft waves around her shoulders and eyes that seem to follow me as I move. She wears a white dress, simple and elegant, and around her throat is a pendant, a deep blue sapphire that catches the light even in the painting. but it is her expression that undoes me. She is smiling, but it is not a joyful smile. It is possessive, knowing, almost triumphant. She looks like a woman who has won something precious and will never let it go. Beneath the portrait, on a small brass plaque, I read the inscription, Louisa Catherine Ashford, Duchess of Ashford, born 1825, died 1843. Beloved wife. I do the arithmetic in my head. She was only 18 when she died, younger than I am now. I stare at her face, at those knowing eyes, and I feel a chill that has nothing to do with the cold room. This is the woman I saw in the mirror. I am certain of it. The same fair hair, the same intensity, the same fury. She was very young, I say quietly, not turning to look at Mrs. Calloway, who has remained near the doorway. Too young, the housekeeper says, and there is something in her voice I have not heard before, something almost like pity. She was not meant for this house. She was not strong enough for it. What happened to her, I ask. There is a long pause. Then, carefully, Mrs. Calloway says, She fell, Your Grace, from the third-floor gallery down to the entrance hall. It was late at night. They say she was sleepwalking, or perhaps she was unwell. His Grace found her in the morning. He has never been the same since. I turn to face her. Do you believe that? That she fell? Mrs. Calloway's face is unreadable. It does not matter what I believe, she says. It is what happened. And now, if you please, we should leave this room. It is not healthy to linger among the dead. But as I follow her out of the gallery, casting one last look at the portrait, I see something that makes my blood run cold. The pendant Louisa wears in the painting, the sapphire on its delicate chain, I know that pendant. I saw it last night, reflected in the mirror, gleaming at the throat of the woman who whispered to me. And I see now what I did not notice in my fear and exhaustion. The woman in the mirror was not just similar to the woman in this portrait. She was identical. Same dress, same pendant, same terrible, possessive gaze. I do not speak of this to Mrs. Calloway. I do not know how to put it into words, how to explain what I saw without sounding mad. Instead, I let her lead me back through the house, back to the main corridors where the air is warmer and the light more forgiving. But I cannot shake the feeling that I am being followed, that with every step I take, she is behind me, watching, waiting. That evening, I dine with the Duke in a vast dining room that feels too large for two people. We sit at opposite ends of a long table, candles flickering between us, and we speak of inconsequential things, the weather, the condition of the roads, the state of the household accounts. He is polite, distant, every inch the gentleman performing his duty. But I see the way his eyes sometimes drift past me, as if he is looking at something I cannot see, and I wonder if he feels it too, the presence that haunts this house. When the meal is finished, he rises and bids me good night, and once again I am left alone. I return to my chambers, my heart heavy with questions I do not dare ask, and I prepare for bed with a growing sense of dread. I try not to look at the mirror, but it draws my gaze like a lodestone. In the firelight, the glass seems to shimmer, and I think I see movement in its depths, a flicker of white, a suggestion of a face. I blow out the candles quickly and climb into bed, pulling the covers over my head like a child hiding from the dark. But even in the blackness, even with my eyes squeezed shut, I can feel her. She is here, in this room, in this house, in the very air I breathe. And I know, with a certainty that terrifies me, that she will not rest until I understand what she wants, until I face the truth of what happened in Ashford Manor all those years ago. The days that follow take on a strange, dreamlike quality, as if I am moving through water, everything muted and distorted. I try to establish routines, to make this house feel like a home, but Ashford Manor resists me at every turn. Rooms I swear I have never entered feel familiar. Corridors I thought I knew lead to places I do not recognize. And always, always, there is the sensation of being watched, of eyes following me from shadows and corners where no one stands. I see her twice more in the mirror. Once in the morning, when I am brushing my hair, her face appears beside mine for just a heartbeat, her lips moving as if she is speaking though I hear no sound. And once at night, when I wake from restless sleep and see her standing reflected behind me, her hand reaching toward my shoulder. Both times I turn around to find nothing, only empty air and the soft crackle of the dying fire. I tell myself I am imagining it, that grief and loneliness are playing tricks on my mind. But I know the truth. Louisa is here. She has never left. The Duke remains distant, a ghost himself in many ways. He takes his meals in his study, leaves the house at odd hours, and when we do encounter each other in the corridors, he offers polite nods and nothing more. I catch him sometimes, standing before windows, staring out at nothing, his expression so desolate that I feel a pain in my chest I cannot name. I want to speak to him, to ask him about Louisa, about what really happened, but I am afraid of what he might tell me, and more afraid of what he might not. It is on the 5th night that everything changes. I am lying in bed, unable to sleep, when I hear it. Music, faint and far away, but unmistakable. A piano, playing a melody that is both beautiful and unbearably sad. I sit up, my heart pounding, and listen. The sound is coming from somewhere below, drifting up through the floors like smoke. I know I should stay in my room, lock the door, pull the covers over my head and wait for morning. But something compels me to rise, to wrap a shawl around my shoulders and venture out into the dark corridor. The house is cold and silent, except for the music. I follow the sound down the main staircase, through the entrance hall where moonlight streams through tall windows and casts long shadows across the floor. The music grows louder, clearer, and I realize it is coming from the drawing room. The door is ajar, and through the gap I can see the flicker of candlelight. My hands are shaking as I push the door open wider and step inside. The Duke sits at the piano, his fingers moving over the keys with a grace I did not know he possessed. His eyes are closed, his face drawn with an anguish so raw it steals my breath. He is playing from memory, I realize, pouring something out through the music that he cannot speak aloud. I stand frozen in the doorway, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell holds him. When the last note fades into silence, he opens his eyes and sees me standing there. For a moment neither of us speaks. Then, quietly, he says, "I did not mean to wake you." I step into the room, pulling the door closed behind me. "You did not," I say. "I could not sleep. The music is beautiful. Did you compose it?" He shakes his head, looking down at the keys. "It was her favorite, Louisa's. She used to play it every evening before dinner. I have not heard it since she died, except in my dreams." The admission hangs between us, heavy and dangerous. I move closer, drawn by something I cannot name, and sit on the bench beside him, careful to leave space between us. "Will you tell me about her?" I ask softly. "Please, I need to understand." He is silent for so long I think he will refuse. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he begins to speak. "She was very young when we married, 17. I was 28, and I thought myself worldly, experienced enough to guide her, to protect her. But I was a fool. I did not know what I was bringing her into." "Into what?" I ask, though part of me fears the answer. "This house, this family." He gestures vaguely at the walls around us, at the shadows that seem to press in from every corner. There are things here, histories, secrets that should have stayed buried. Louisa was sensitive, too sensitive perhaps. She claimed to see things, hear things, voices in the night, figures in mirrors. I told her it was nonsense, that old houses make strange sounds, that grief and imagination can conjure phantoms where none exist. I thought I was being rational, helping her to see reason. But I was wrong. My throat is dry. What did she see? He turns to look at me then, and in his eyes I see something that terrifies me. Belief. Herself, he says. She claimed she saw herself, a version of herself that was not quite right, that watched her and whispered terrible things. She said it wanted to take her place, to live the life she was living, to have everything she had, including me. I thought she was ill, losing her mind. I brought doctors, specialists. They gave her tonics, medicines that made her sleep, but nothing helped. She grew worse, more frantic, more convinced that something was trying to steal her life. And then she fell, I whisper. His jaw tightens. They say she fell, but I found her, and what I saw. He stops, shakes his head. There were marks on her arms, as if someone had grabbed her. Her face was turned toward the stairs, but her expression, it was not fear. It was fury, as if she had been fighting someone. But there was no one else there. The house was locked. The servants were all accounted for. You think something pushed her, I say, and it is not a question. I do not know what I think, he says, and his voice breaks on the words. I only know that I failed her. I did not listen when she begged me to leave this place, to take her away. I told her we could not abandon Ashford, that it was my duty, my responsibility, and so she died here, in this house that I chose over her happiness. I have lived with that guilt every day since. I feel tears prick my eyes, not just for Louisa, but for him, for the weight he has carried alone for so long. I reach out, without thinking, and place my hand over his where it rests on the piano keys. He flinches at the touch, but does not pull away. You could not have known, I say. You were trying to help her. He looks at our hands, his expression unreadable. And now I have brought you here, into the same nightmare. I told myself it would be different, that enough time had passed, that the house had settled. But I see it in your eyes. You have seen her too, have you not? Louisa, in the mirrors, in the shadows. I want to deny it, to protect him from this knowledge, but I cannot lie. Yes, I whisper. I have seen her. She speaks to me. She says you belong to her. He closes his eyes and I see a tear slide down his cheek. I am sorry, he says. I am so sorry. I should never have married you. I should have let my name die with me rather than condemn another woman to this curse. It is not your fault, I say, and I realize as I speak that I mean it. Whatever is happening here, it is not of his making. He is as much a victim as Louisa was, as I am now. We are all trapped in something that began long before any of us arrived. He opens his eyes and looks at me, really looks at me, for perhaps the first time since I came to this house. There is something in his gaze that makes my breath catch, a vulnerability, a longing, a desperate hope that perhaps he is not as alone as he believed. And in that moment, sitting beside him in the candle-lit drawing room with the ghost of his first wife hovering between us, I feel something shift inside me. It is not love, not yet, but it is the beginning of something, a recognition, a possibility. Help me, I say. Help me understand what is happening. Together, perhaps we can find a way to end this. He nods slowly, and for the first time since I arrived at Ashford Manor, I see something that might be hope in his eyes. Tomorrow, he says. Tomorrow we will search the house, read her journals, speak to those who knew her. We will find the truth, whatever it costs us. I agree, though I do not tell him what I already suspect, what I felt the moment I saw Louisa's portrait. This is not simply a haunting. This is a battle, a war for possession of this house, of him, of the life I have only just begun to claim. And I do not yet know if I am strong enough to win it, or if I even want to. That night, when I return to my room, the mirror is waiting. And this time, when Louisa appears, she is not whispering. She is smiling, cold and cruel and triumphant. And I know without question that she heard everything, that she knows I am beginning to care for the man she still considers hers. The game has begun in earnest now, and only one of us will survive it. Morning brings no comfort, only a gray light that seeps through the curtains like water through cracked stone. I dress quickly, my hands trembling as I fasten each button, and make my way downstairs to find the Duke already waiting in the library. He looks as though he has not slept at all, his shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled, but there is a determination in his eyes that was not there before. On the desk before him are stacks of papers, leather-bound journals, and a small wooden box I do not recognize. I found these in the attic, he says without preamble. Louisa's journals, letters she wrote but never sent, and some belongings the servants packed away after she died. I have not been able to look at them until now. I thought if I ignored them long enough, the memories would fade. But they have not. They have only grown stronger. I sit across from him, my heart beating fast, and reach for the nearest journal. The leather is soft with age, and when I open it, I see Louisa's handwriting, delicate and precise, covering page after page. The early entries are ordinary, the observations of a young bride adjusting to married life. She writes of the house, of the servants, of her hope that she and the Duke will grow to love each other in time. But as I turn the pages, the tone shifts. The entries become shorter, more frantic, the handwriting less controlled. I read aloud, my voice unsteady. March the 8th. I saw her again today, in the mirror in my dressing room. She looks exactly like me, but her eyes are wrong, cold and hungry. She whispers things I cannot quite hear, promises and threats all tangled together. I told Edward, but he says it is only my reflection, that I am imagining things because I am lonely and far from home. But I know what I saw. She is real, and she wants something from me. The Duke's face has gone pale. I remember that day, he says quietly. She came to me in tears, begging me to believe her. I held her and told her it was nothing, that old mirrors sometimes distort images, that her mind was playing tricks. I thought I was comforting her, but I was only making it worse. I turn more pages, reading entries that grow increasingly desperate. She writes of hearing footsteps in empty rooms, of finding objects moved when no one has touched them, of waking in the night to see a figure standing at the foot of her bed. And always, always, the woman in the mirror, growing bolder, more insistent. In one entry, dated just a week before her death, Louisa writes something that makes my blood run cold. She told me her name today. Or rather, she told me she has no name, that she is what I could have been, what I should have been if I had been stronger, braver, more willing to fight for what I want. She says I am too weak to deserve this life, this house, this man. She says she will take it all from me, and there is nothing I can do to stop her. I set the journal down, my hands shaking. The Duke is staring at the papers before him, his jaw clenched. This is not a ghost, I say slowly, piecing it together as I speak. This is something else, something that feeds on fear and weakness, that takes the shape of its victim to torment them. He looks up at me, and I see understanding dawn in his eyes. A doppelganger, he says. I have read of such things in folklore, spirits or manifestations that mirror a person, that seek to replace them, but I never believed they were real. They are real, I say, and I feel a strange calm settle over me, the clarity that comes when you finally name the thing you have been running from. And Louisa was not strong enough to fight it, but perhaps I am. He reaches across the desk and takes my hand, and the warmth of his touch steadies me. You are stronger than you know, he says, and there is something in his voice, an emotion he is trying to hold back. I see it now, how brave you have been, coming to this house, facing these terrors without complaint. Louisa was young and sheltered, unprepared for the darkness here. But you have already survived so much. You have sacrificed everything for your family. That kind of strength does not break easily. I feel tears prick my eyes, but I do not let them fall. Then we must find out how to defeat it, I say. There must be a way. Louisa could not have been the first person this entity attached itself to. He nods and opens the wooden box. Inside are more papers, older ones, yellowed with age. I found these as well, he says. Records from the previous owners of Ashford Manor, dating back over a century. There are accounts here, stories of women who lived in this house and died under mysterious circumstances. Falls, illnesses, madness. Always women, always young, always within a few years of coming here. How many, I ask, though I am not sure I want to know the answer. 7, he says quietly. 7 women over the course of 150 years, and all of them reported seeing their own reflection behaving strangely before they died. 7 women. 7 lives stolen by something that has lived in this house far longer than any of us. I feel a chill run through me, but also a spark of anger, hot and fierce. This thing, whatever it is, has taken enough. It will not have me. It will not have the life I have only just begun to fight for. We spend the rest of the day searching through the papers, looking for clues, for some pattern or weakness we can exploit. The servants avoid us, casting nervous glances in our direction when they think we are not looking. Mrs. Calloway brings us tea at midday and sets it down without a word, her expression grave. She knows what we are doing, I realize. She has always known what haunts this house, and she has watched it claim victim after victim, powerless to stop it. As evening falls, The Duke lights candles in the library, and we sit together in the flickering light, exhausted but unwilling to give up. I am reading through a letter written by one of the previous victims, a woman named Catherine who lived here in the late 1700s, when I find something that makes me sit up straight. "Listen to this," I say, and the Duke leans closer. She writes, "The only time the apparition cannot reach me is when I am not alone, when another living soul shares the room with me. It is as though the presence feeds on isolation, on the moment when the mind is most vulnerable to doubt and fear. I have begged my husband to stay with me at night, but he refuses, saying I must learn to master my own terrors. I fear what will happen when I am left alone again." The Duke's face is stricken. "That is what I did to Louisa," he says, his voice breaking. "I left her alone, night after night, thinking she needed to overcome her fears on her own. I was so certain I was helping her, teaching her to be strong, but I was only delivering her into its hands. You did not know," I say, gripping his hand. "But we know now, and we can use this. If isolation gives it power, then we must not give it that opportunity." He looks at me, and in his eyes I see fear, but also something else, something that has been growing between us over these past days of shared danger and discovery. "I will not leave you alone," he says. "Not tonight, not any night, until we have found a way to end this." The promise hangs between us, weighted with meaning beyond mere protection. And as we sit there in the candle-lit library, our hands still clasped across the desk, I feel it, the thing that has been building since that night at the piano. It is not just gratitude, not just the bond forged by shared fear. It is something deeper, something that terrifies me more than any ghost, because it is real and human and entirely my own choice. I am beginning to care for this man, this haunted Duke who failed one wife and is determined not to fail another. That night, true to his word, he stays with me. We move a chair into my room, and he sits by the fire while I lie in bed, neither of us sleeping, both of us watching the mirror that hangs on the far wall. For hours, nothing happens. But then, as the clock strikes 3, I see it. A flicker in the glass, a shadow that is not cast by the firelight. The Duke sees it too. He rises from his chair and moves to stand beside the bed, his presence a wall between me and whatever watches from the other side of the mirror. The shadow coalesces, taking form, and Louisa appears in the reflection. But this time, she is different. Her face is twisted with rage, her hands pressed against the glass as if she is trying to break through. Her mouth moves, forming words I cannot hear but can somehow feel, a litany of accusation and hatred. "Mine," she seems to say. "He is mine. This house is mine. You will not take what belongs to me." I sit up, my heart pounding, and the Duke moves closer, his hand finding mine. "You are not Louisa," he says, his voice steady and firm, speaking to the reflection. "Louisa is dead. You are something that wore her face, that used her fear to gain power. But you have no claim here. Not anymore." The figure in the mirror writhes, and for a moment the glass seems to ripple, as if it is liquid rather than solid. Then, with a sound like breaking ice, the image shatters into fragments, each piece reflecting a different moment, a different woman. I see Catherine and the others, all the women who came before, all trapped in that terrible glass, their faces frozen in silent screams. And then, as quickly as it appeared, the vision fades, and the mirror shows only our own reflections, the Duke and I standing together, his arm around my shoulders, my head against his chest. "We have made it angry," I whisper. "What happens now?" "Now," he says, and I hear the determination in his voice. "Now we finish this." The next morning we begin in earnest. The Duke sends for the vicar, an elderly man who has served the parish for 40 years and knows more about Ashford Manor than anyone living. He arrives at midday, his face grave when the Duke explains what we have discovered. He listens without interruption, his gnarled hands folded in his lap, and when we finish, he is silent for a long moment. "I have always suspected there was something wrong with this house," he says at last. "I performed the funeral rites for the young Duchess 7 years ago, and I felt it then, a presence that did not belong, something that lingered when it should have passed on. But no one would listen to an old man's superstitions. They wanted simple explanations, natural causes, anything to avoid facing the truth. Is there a way to stop it? I ask. Some ritual? Some blessing that might drive it out? The vicar shakes his head slowly. What you describe is not a spirit of the dead, but something older, something that has attached itself to this place like a parasite. It feeds on fear and isolation, as you have learned. But more than that, it feeds on claim. It takes the form of those who feel they have a right to be here, who have made this house their own, and it uses that sense of possession against them. Then how do we fight something like that? The Duke asks, and I hear the desperation in his voice. The vicar looks at us both, his pale eyes sharp and knowing. You must break its claim, he says. You must prove that this house belongs to the living, not to the shadows of what might have been. And you must do it together, in the place where its power is strongest. The mirror, I say, and he nods. The mirror in your chamber, he confirms. That is where it manifests most clearly, where it watches and waits. You must face it there, both of you, and you must deny it what it seeks. You must show it that you are not alone, that you are not afraid, and that your claim to this life, to each other, is stronger than its hunger. That night, we prepare. The Duke has every other mirror in the house covered with black cloth, cutting off the entity's other vantage points, forcing it to concentrate its power in one place. The servants watch us with wide, frightened eyes, but they do as they are told. And by sunset, the house is transformed, all its reflective surfaces hidden, all its watching eyes blinded except for one. I stand in my chamber as the Duke lights candles around the room, creating a circle of light that pushes back the shadows. He has brought Louisa's journals, the papers from the attic, and one more thing, the sapphire pendant from her portrait, the one I saw gleaming at the throat of the woman in the mirror. He sets it on the dressing table, and I see his hands tremble. This was hers, he says quietly. I gave it to her on our wedding day. After she died, I could not bear to see it, so I had it locked away with her other belongings. But now I think it is part of what binds her here, or what binds the thing that wears her shape. We must destroy it. I nod, understanding. The pendant is a symbol, a physical anchor for the entity's claim. As long as it exists, the past has power over the present. But destroying it will not be enough. We must also confront what it represents, the grief and guilt and love that the Duke has carried for so long. Are you ready? I ask, and he looks at me with such intensity that I feel my breath catch. I have been ready for 7 years, he says. I just did not know it until you came. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever. Hope, the will to fight, and something else, something I did not think I deserved. He does not finish the sentence, but I know what he means. I feel it too, this thing growing between us, fragile and fierce and entirely real. I reach for his hand, and when our fingers intertwine, I feel a warmth that has nothing to do with the candles burning around us. Then let us end this, I say. Together. We turn to face the mirror, and as if it has been waiting for this moment, the glass begins to shimmer. The reflection changes, distorts, and Louisa appears, but she is not alone. Behind her, I see the faces of the other women, Catherine and the rest, all trapped in that terrible space between life and death, all watching with hollow, desperate eyes. And at the center of it all is something else, something formless and hungry, the true face of the entity that has fed on their fear for so long. Louisa's image steps forward, pressing her hands against the glass from the inside, and this time I can hear her voice, thin and distant but clear. He is mine, she says, but there is a pleading quality to it now, a desperation. I loved him. I gave everything to be his wife. You have no right to take my place. The Duke steps forward, his face pale but resolute. Louisa, he says, and his voice breaks on her name. I loved you too, but you are gone. You died 7 years ago, and I have mourned you every day since. But this, he gestures at the mirror, at the twisted reflection, this is not you. This is not the woman I married. Louisa was kind and gentle and afraid of nothing except losing herself. She would never have trapped others the way you have trapped those women. She would never have demanded that I stop living, stop hoping, stop loving. The figure in the mirror recoils, and for a moment I see confusion in her eyes, as if she is remembering something she had forgotten. The Duke continues, his voice growing stronger. I failed you in life, but I will not fail you in death. I release you, Louisa. I release myself. This house, this life, it belongs to the living now, to me and to her. He turns to me, and in his eyes I see everything he has not said aloud, all the feelings that have been growing in the spaces between fear and hope. I love you, he says. And the words are simple, but they carry the weight of a vow. Not because you are my wife in name, but because you are brave and strong, and you have shown me that it is possible to choose life over grief, love over guilt. I choose you. I choose this. I feel tears on my cheeks, but they are not tears of sorrow. They are tears of relief, of joy, of something breaking open inside me that I did not know was closed. I love you too, I say, and I mean it with every fiber of my being. And I claim this life. I claim this house. I claim you. Not because of duty or obligation, but because I choose it. Because I choose us. The moment the words leave my lips, something shifts. The mirror cracks, a single line running down the center of the glass like a lightning bolt. The figure of Louisa begins to fade, her edges blurring, and behind her I see the other women, the ones who came before, their faces softening, their eyes closing as if they are finally allowed to rest. The formless hunger that lurked behind them dissipates like smoke, and for a brief moment I feel a presence, gentle and grateful, brushing past me like a summer breeze. Thank you, it whispers, in a voice that might be Louisa's or might be all of theirs together. Thank you for setting us free. The Duke picks up the sapphire pendant and without hesitation throws it into the fireplace. The stone hits the burning logs and shatters with a sound like breaking ice, and the mirror on the wall explodes outward in a shower of glass that dissolves into nothing before it can touch us. Where the mirror hung, there is now only bare wall, empty and clean and free of shadows. We stand in the silence that follows, holding each other, and I feel the house itself exhale, as if it has been holding its breath for 150 years. The oppressive weight that has hung over Ashford Manor since I arrived is gone, lifted like fog, burned away by morning sun. The air feels lighter, warmer, and through the window I can see the first rays of dawn breaking over the gardens. In the days that follow, the house transforms. The Duke orders all the remaining mirrors replaced with new ones, all the shuttered rooms opened and aired, all the covered furniture uncovered and put back into use. The servants, sensing the change, become cheerful and talkative, and Mrs. Calloway even smiles at me one morning, a rare and genuine expression that makes her look years younger. The house is no longer a tomb. It is becoming a home. The Duke and I, we are learning each other in ways I never expected. He tells me about his childhood, his dreams, his regrets. I tell him about my family, my fears, my hopes for the future. We walk through the gardens in the evening. We sit together in the library reading. We play the piano in the drawing room, and slowly, carefully, we build something new on the foundations of what was broken. 1 month after the night we destroyed the mirror, he comes to me in the morning room where I am writing letters to my sisters. He kneels beside my chair and takes my hand, and in his eyes I see everything I need to know. I married you to save your family, he says, but I would marry you again now, for no reason except that I love you and I want to spend every day of my life proving it to you. Will you let me? Will you choose me again, knowing everything you know, knowing what this house once was and what we have made it become? I pull him to his feet and kiss him, and in that kiss is my answer, my promise, my choice. Yes, I say. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. We are married again, in the small chapel on the grounds, with the vicar presiding and my family in attendance. My sisters weep with joy, my parents beam with pride, and as I walk down the aisle in a simple white dress, I catch a glimpse of something in the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows. For just a moment, I think I see her, Louisa, young and radiant and free, smiling at me with an expression that holds no malice, only gratitude and peace. And then she is gone, and there is only sunlight and love and the future stretching out before us, bright and unwritten, and entirely our own. I married the Duke to save my family, but in the end we saved each other.